Can young anybody practice well enough to be? Are we able to be our own certain master? She said, I can't pretend to know where we hard to hear that track up here. And live fade outs never really work, so let's just pitch that off. All right, so. Thank you guys very much. I hope. Hey, I'm up there, awesome. Oh, that's great. Thank you very much, Mike, wherever you are. Hopefully I stayed somewhat on beat there. I should have thought to bring a personal monitoring system, and I did not. So that song uses a flamenco technique that's one of a class of techniques called rasgueado. I think it means to scratch in Spanish. I'm not sure. Rasguear, I don't know. So there's a bunch. This is a whole class of techniques. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, and the version of it that I like the best is a triplet version you saw me using, and that's called a tresillo. And it sounds like this. It's a really fun thing. It's a cool way, you know, as stringed instrumentalists that don't use a bow. I'm always interested in ways that help you elongate, you know, a phrase or elongate a note or a feeling. So it's a nice way to, you know, to kind of prolong a sound, if that makes sense. So the way, and the other thing that I'm using a lot here, the technique part sort of encompasses two sides of things. So the other thing that I'm doing that people ask me a lot about is I tend to think of it as quad slapping. So it's sort of the Victor Wooten double thumb thing with additional fingers. Which is also really cool and really fun, and that is really useful for me because I'm not a super fast pizzicato fingerstyle player. By the way, yeah,
you do that super slow. I want to learn how to do that.
Totally, man. Yeah, totally. I'm going to break both of these down, but I'll just do that now. So, how many of you guys are bass players? Oh, okay, awesome. For some reason, I thought that maybe there wouldn't be very many bass players, it'd be mostly drummers. Well, that's great. So some of you guys may have seen Victor Wooten or other bass players doing the down-up thumb slap thing, which very specifically is a rest stroke because you're resting on a string as opposed to bouncing off. If you bounce off, you have no opportunity for an upstroke. There's very little benefit to doing that versus doing that. They sound almost the same. And if you do the rest stroke style slapping, and you have an upstroke, then you're just adding little pops. So that's index finger, index middle. You get your ring finger in on the action too. I'm not super good at that one, but that is basically the stroke. So I'm going down, up, 1, 2, down, up, 1, 2. And you can do really cool rhythms. That's the other thing that I like about this. It's a really productive rhythmic technique, because you can add together groups that, you know, have cool rhythmic feels, and do them across strings. So that was 3 and then 4. And the reason that I kind of got really into doing more of that, hopefully that wasn't too quiet there, is, you know, there are certain things that as bass players we kind of think of as our domain, you know, and slap is one of those things, at least that I thought it was. And I've always been into progressive music, and I was kind of aware of Animals as leaders, the band Animals as leaders, when they first started playing, when Tosin Abasi first started doing his thing. And it was really sensational, and here comes this guy who slaps on a guitar. Oh, that's weird. So 10 years later, the guy's like better than almost any bass player that I know. And it kind of bothered me, you know, it's like I have sort of like a chip on my shoulder about, that's our technique, that's our thing. But he's actually a brilliant musician, so a lot of this is just from becoming aware that the bar has been raised sort of across the field of stringed instrumentalism. And the other thing is, you know, I'm playing a 6-string bass here, as you can see, playing a lot of chords. I think as time goes on, the lines between what guitar is and what bass is get progressively blurred. And I'm into that. I'm here for that. So I think it's really cool. There's a lot of really great Animals as leaders riffs. Let's see. Oh, it's so hard to do. Infinite regression that's incredibly hard to play, and Tosin Abasi makes it look like he's just like not even awake, he's just half asleep. Yeah, man.
When you go down with the thumb, do you go through the string
Yes.
to the body?
Oh, that's a good question. No, for me it's an arcing motion. They kind of, I describe it to students as working in 2 planes. It's going inwards and also downwards. So it's a wrist rotation. It's just like turning a door handle. So if you had, like, if we turn out the lights and I had like a little neon thing on my thumb and we took a long exposure photo, you'd see like this sort of semicircular arc that goes down through the string. And different people do it. I have students that do this pretty differently from me. I think a lot of it is anatomy dependent. I don't have one of the cool hitchhiker thumbs that ends backwards. Yeah, there you do. That's awesome. Oh, a lot of you guys do. Is this like an Ohio thing? Okay.
You're on the highway.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's awesome. So yeah, so I'm going down through the string, coming back up, and how you do that exactly is, it just doesn't really matter how you achieve it. It's the sound, and you know, setup is also a part of it. So I definitely work on my own instruments, and I encourage everybody to learn how to do your own setups if you haven't, because it's a very personal thing. No one can ever set up an instrument as well for you as you can for you when you know what you're doing. Otherwise, there's always something that's lost in translation between a third party. So that is that technique. And I guess as we're doing questions, does anybody else have a question about that? Or the flamenco stuff? Okay, let me see what my, yes?
What is the difference, I guess rhythmic difference, but what's the difference in technique between the triplet flamenco and the traditional one that you described?
Yeah, so there are, I sort of hinted at this, there are a lot of different types of rasgueados, or rasgueos, and I suck at most of them. So I can't do a good job of showing you exactly how they go, but there's a roll version that is kind of an explosive finger thing. That's a 4-stroke deal. I'm not very good at that. There are, I mean, you can do this tresillo thing with an additional note at the end as a punctuation mark, sort of like the way to hit like a down. Which is another fun thing that I like to do. And just because it's a triplet sort of technique doesn't mean that you have to play it as triplets. In fact, I think this is one song. Yeah, so that song that I just played, I'm using this pattern of 3, but they're not triplets. They're just fast 16th notes. Depending on how you count it, they might be 30 seconds. So that's a pretty productive way to use it too. So I'm not really concerned too much about whether something is a triplet or not when I'm playing that. Another example of that would be, let's see here. Let's see, what happens if I do this? Well, here, I'll stop. I mean, I can hear it, but it's hard to, without monitoring, it's hard to hear that and play it in time to it. But the riff there is. That's actually a triplet. So that's where I go. That's being used as a triplet there. So it's 2 examples of usage of that in different rhythmic modalities. Good question. Yeah.
What would you suggest for? I started on 4-string and moving to 6-string.
Ooh.
And
Just jumping right in.
Slap technique of like this thing, like the down.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest as a good way to train or to get that side thumb thing, get that double?
That is a really, really good question because I went through the same process. I've been playing bass for 28 years. I started when I was 13. And I learned to slap from a VHS of Flea instructional video. I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably seen that. It was like by Starlix. River Phoenix was high out of his mind and interviewing him and asking questions like, do you ever go like this when you play? If you haven't watched the video, you really should. It's awesome. But so I come from that school of slap, and I had to relearn. I had to reteach myself, and a lot of it had to do. This is actually a good point that was not on my agenda at all. But a lot of it has to do with the position of your instrument and practicing how you play. So at the time, I was wearing my bass really low, and that is a natural thing, you know. If I have my bass is hanging down here, I can't get the right kind of angle, you know, on my thumb. It's really difficult. So when I started raising the bass up a little bit, that made it more of a tenable sort of thing to try to do. And then it's just practice, and it really is like turning a door handle. And when you get it going, you're kind of swinging your thumb like a baseball bat or an axe or something. It doesn't really require very much effort. In fact, the smaller you can make it, the more effective it is. If your setup is right, you don't need a lot of power. So just kind of raising your bass up a little bit, and then the thing that I mentioned, practicing how you play. So you notice that I have my bass between my legs. When I stand up, it stays in the exact same place. So this for me is real playing. This is what I think of as the real thing. So when I do the real thing, I want all of my practice to apply. If you don't practice the same way that you play, like if you practice or here, and just kind of lazy with it. I mean, I do that too. But if you only practice this way, all these mechanics go out the window. When you're playing like this, and you're like rocking out, and stuff's going on, all that stuff goes out the window. It doesn't really apply. So practicing how you play is a big part of building a technique like that, I think. Good question. Alrighty, so let's see. I like to use these 2 techniques together, the ones I talked about here, the quad style slapping, or tense, or hexes. I like that one. I like to use that in combination with the strumming stuff, and I've come to think of that as strumping. Yeah, very right. Clever, right? Strumping. TM. And this is something, it's not a new concept. So Stanley Clarke is, he's one of my bass idols. And he was doing all this stuff in the 70s, or at least a lot of it. But with Stanley Clarke, he kind of had phrases. He would do these different techniques in different phrases. So you have a song like School Day. And then it has a slap part. But he doesn't really combine them very much. And then you get guys like Les Claypool, who's really interested or really inspired by Stanley Clarke, and now he's combining these two things in a singular phrase. So a chorus of an old Primus song called Damn Blue Collar Tweakers sounds like this. Hard to play on the 6th string without hitting that C string. So he's kind of combining them now into a singular phrase, but he's doing the bounce off, the free stroke style slap. So he's not able to do any of the more intricate rhythms on the slap part. What was that? So just combining those is something that I use a lot in writing, and I write songs and I obviously sing, so the bass takes on, I just try not to limit it. It kind of does whatever I need it to do for the music that I want to make. And I guess that kind of is a good segue into the second part. Oh, yes?
Did you ever listen to any of Abraham Laboyle's stuff on that? Because he
Oh,
does a lot of that.
That is great. Yeah, I am totally remiss for not bringing him up. Abraham Laboyle. If you guys don't know who he is, check him out. He's incredible. He's like from another planet. He's got a right hand like you wouldn't believe. I remember one year, like a long time ago, like in the 90s, Bass Player magazine published like a mini guide or like dissertation that he had kind of given them of like 35 different right hand techniques. Like I can think of 35 right hand techniques. He's got all these cool things that he does, and he's flicking stuff. It's great. So yeah, definitely an inspiration for anybody who wants to do more advanced right hand stuff. So the reason that you can see my screen, because Ableton's not very pretty, is the second part here of this clinic, which I'm going to kind of get through pretty quickly so you guys can get some food and do your lunch session thing. But using the instrument as a controller, really into this concept, using the bass as a controller, either in real time or for compositional purposes outside of real time, and I do both. So an example of this would be this clip here. If I launch this, those were chords on bass. So that was, let's see, I don't even remember what I played. Adding a sharp 11 or something. That's chords on the bass that I converted to MIDI. So if I open this guy up, you'll see a bunch of MIDI notes. This is something that I do a lot because my feeling is I've invested 28 years into this instrument. I'm a much better bass player than I am a keyboardist or a drummer or a singer or anything else. So I see the instrument as my connection to music, really. I mean, I see it as my input, my controller, my access point into the world of music. And there's a couple of ways that are really cool that you can do this. So you can do it real time or non-real time. And this was a non-real time thing that I'll show you. I'll do an example here. All right, let me just X these guys out. I need to do is just record something. So let's see what I'm gonna do first here. We'll just do some chords, see how it goes. Oh, that's not gonna record anything because I'm plugged directly into the amp and not into my audio interface. So, but that's okay. You can see that other MIDI clip that I showed you, that basically makes that happen. Shoot, there's another whole section of that I want to go through, which is real-time audio to MIDI conversion. And if let's see, is there another 1/4-inch cable that I can use really quickly? If so, I can probably make it work. But in the meantime, oh, perfect. Thank you, sir. Okay, let me see if I can do this really fast. And in the meantime, just to sort of get the most out of a possible Q&A session, does anybody have any questions so far? It can be on anything. Doesn't have to be something I talked about. Oh, thank you, Tom. All right. So let's try to record some chords again. Hey, look at that waveform. It's working. Let's get a funky diminished one. It's probably going to have a hard time reading that. So we'll see what happens here. So this is something that Ableton is specifically good for, but you can use a lot of different DAWs to do this. I'm going to take that waveform that you see up there, and I'm going to drag it down into the track below it, and it's going to ask me, the track below it is a MIDI track that I've already set up. It's not audio, and it has a synth in there, and it's going to ask me what I want to do with this audio information. How do I want to convert it? And my choices are harmony, melody, or drums. So harmony is polyphonic, melody is monophonic, drums is just listens to the transients more than anything. So I'm going to select harmony, and it converts it and does its little thing. All right, and then I'm going to solo that track, and let's see what it got from what I played. That's a few errant things up there. This is a crappy sounding synth that I loaded in. But I actually got the diminished chord pretty well. So this is a great creative tool. I do this a lot and don't always care if it's perfectly translating what I've played in, because I chop it up then. I use it as basically inspiration for making something with it. So it's a great way to kind of get out of the box that you might be in. And then another way to do this is just to convert an actual melody, which I do a lot, but I'll skip that part. And instead, I'll do some real-time stuff.
Do you do drums through that?
I do. Who asked me that?
I'd love to hear that. I asked.
Oh, you asked me that. Yeah, I couldn't tell first. Yeah, I don't have a drum synth loaded up right now. And I don't want to take up your time finding a good sounding kit, but yeah, I do that. It was, in fact, this program that I'm about to launch here, or that I'm about to do, is something that lets you do that pretty easily. Let's see here. Pretty cool, right? So that's actually MIDI. That's not audio at all. That's not like a synthesizer. It's got a bunch of rumblings there. So let me open that up and show you what's going on. All right, so this is a great program called MIDI Guitar 2. Yeah, somebody, yeah, you know it? Yeah, I mean, as far as things that are out there, options you can do, I find it to be at least as capable or as accurate as using a divided pickup, like a Roland GK3B, which I've also used and had no better results at all. And that requires a bunch of hardware. You know, you have to have a big controller on your bass unless it's built in. And it's really pretty old technology at this point. That pickup's been out for 25 years or something. It hasn't really been improved upon. So doing this as a software-based thing is great. And as you can hear, well, as you can hear from my volume, it's polyphonic, which is even better. So that's been sort of like the brass ring for real-time audio to MIDI transformation, and something that's been really hard to achieve. So I'm using MIDI Guitar 2, as well as a different program called MIDI Bass, made by the same folks. And basically, MIDI Guitar 2 tracks down to this E. Actually, it goes down to D, because you can detune, and that would be the lowest note on a detuned 6-string guitar. And then MIDI Bass picks up below that. MIDI Bass is monophonic, so I can't play chords, at least it doesn't interpret them well if I try to play intervals like that, below that E. That doesn't work, but I can do it above that point, and I can stay monophonic down there anyways for bass lines. It's kind of cool. You can also do splits. You can do like a different voice down here. Which I don't have you can do some really fun stuff with it. So that has been a big creative thing for me, a big creative inspiration. And that song that you heard that I played at the top of the hour, Can't Pretend to Know, uses all that stuff, but everything that you heard is the bass, except for the drums, everything, and vocals. So yeah, all the pad stuff, the background harmonies, or vocoder, everything is played on the bass or programmed from the bass. So that is, so that's that side of things in a very fast nutshell, condensed into the time that I have. So, anybody have any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
With bass chords, how do you go more trebly when you're mixing your bass chords, or is there some technique-wise that allows you to have that much bass, but also definition to your?
Boy, that's a good question. That's a good question that has a lot of different aspects to the answer. So it's definitely very instrument dependent, in that it is pickup architecture dependent, pickup coils. The thing, in my estimation, the largest defining factor of the way that an electric instrument sounds. I mean, I'm totally into tone woods. Tone woods make a difference. Woods make a difference. But the coil architecture and placement of a pickup is the defining characteristic of an amplified instrument's voice. That's the reason that a P-bass sounds like a P-bass. You can take a P-bass and take that pickup out and put it into single coils, and guess what? It sounds like a jazz bass. The bass didn't change. You know, it's the thing that's happening when you have 2 or more pickups that's called comb filtering, where you're sensing one audio source from 2 different places. That creates a really unique kind of audio thumbprint. And when you're playing with single coil pickups, or one coil that's sensing the string per pickup, that creates a different fingerprint than when you have 2 coils per pickup. So part of that for me is reducing the number of string coil sensing pickups. So I tend to like split coil pickups, which these are. They're big looking, big soap bar guys, but underneath it's just an inline split coil. So it's a hum canceling jazz pickup. In fact, these are custom made for me by Bartolini, and they are essentially their CBJD3 pickup coil in this size shell. So it's a bright jazz bass pickup. So that helps a lot for chordal definition. Aside from that, you know, your playing style, strings that you choose to use, EQ that you choose to use. I just kind of go for broad spectrum clarity. I kind of want to hear all the frequencies. I'm a really non-traditional bass player, as you may have gleaned. Good question, though. Anything else you guys would like to know?
Do you get called for gigs where you're playing backup for someone else, or in the studio where you got to change that up, or you got to go to a more traditional bass tone?
Yeah, that's only what I get called for, aside from when I do Combinator material. So, and that is another sort of subject that's near and dear to me, which is the ability of an instrument to be a chameleon. So I tend to only buy instruments that can do everything that I need them to do. I have 4 basses. And you might think that somebody who does this professionally and has played for almost 30 years would have a room full of basses. This guy over here has, what was it, 120?
Too many.
Too many. Many basses. So I bond
More than
really.
the entire inventory of Guitar Center across the country.
Yeah, no kidding. I bond really tightly with a specific instrument, and like I've been saying, it becomes my conduit into the world of music. So I don't like to use a lot of other instruments. So I tend to only go for ones that I can get everything out of. And this bass can sound. You turn that off. It can really sound a lot of interesting ways that way. Let's see this guy. So it has a lot of tonal variety. I'm using a John East preamp in here. East Uni pre. It's a really great preamp. And I've got variable mid-range and bass and treble and tone control. So it can really have a wide variety of tones. And I recognize that I'm not going through the amp anymore. But yeah, so I only get called by other people. No one calls me to do the stuff that I did here today. That's my stuff. That's the stuff that I'm proud of, and that's the stuff that I put my name on. But no one calls me to do that. So there's another good lesson for you. Learn to play the traditional role of the instrument that you play. It's something that I'm not really that into as time goes on. I feel kind of freed from it. I've enjoyed a career of being a sideman, but I'm a frontman. That's what I do. And I like to not limit myself. I like to not have limits on them. I don't want to just always play a traditional role or a supporting role. I just want my voice to be heard. Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Before we leave today, can you play one of your favorite and funkiest songs that you do?
Favorite and funkiest? Boy, that's a good, yeah, sure. I don't have the tracks loaded, but I can just do a little bit of the bass part, sure. Let's see, I'm gonna reconfigure this, thank you, Tom. So I'm going back through the amp. And by the way, guys, I have, I know Doug asked if anybody still buys CDs. I only have a CD player in my car these days, but I do have CDs with me. I put out an album last year. I'm working on a new album right now, so if you're interested in that, come see me afterwards. Thank you very much. That was super quick. Yes, there we go. All right. Man, favorite and funkiest, that's a cool request. I haven't played this in years. That's it. Try to take a bit, try to hit me when I went to turn on to my street when I don't miss. You saw my blinker, bitch, that's what I know, cause I got a full bullshit. Oh, magic, good sleep, push me, heard it not me out, I'll back up, me and my function to the show. Kids, all of us cool. Take away your saxophone. All of us, I forgot the two of the parts, that's why I'm not playing. Take away your saxophone. It looks like that is my time. So, Tom, do you have some remarks you want to?
One remark is, let's hear for Sean Fairchild.
Thank you guys very much. Check out Combinator. It's at Combinator Music everywhere. So, at Combinator Music, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, everywhere. Check it out. If you're interested in buying something, buying a CD, I will be more than happy to sell you one. And there's my schmoozy salesy thing.
And food trucks are out in front of the SAC. You can get
They're ready.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Also, see Sean's videos reviewing stuff at bassgearbag.com.
That's of course, yeah. Yes. I I forgot to play. And in fact, also I want to say real quick too. In fact, you saw Doug Johns wearing the Genzler t-shirt. The Genzler stuff is so awesome, and they are a partial part. I mean, I'm here because of them. So they are responsible for for sponsoring my being here. And this is, in fact, this is a new cabinet down here that hasn't even been announced. So you guys in this room are hearing it for the first time and learning of it for the first time. I think they're going to announce it next week, but it is a 15-inch version of their new classic cab. And so this is a 15 on the bottom, 210 on top. Sounds awesome. I'm a huge fan of Jeff Genzler's work. So yeah, check out, for all you bass players, check out Genzler Amplification. I was going to say, I was a big fan from back in the Genzler days, but it's not Genzler, it's Genzler Amplification. So yeah, check them out too.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay. Thank you guys.